Have you ever felt like your emotions are running the show when it comes to food? Well, you're not alone. How you think and feel about food has a huge impact on how much you eat.
But here's the good news. You can learn to control those emotional eating patterns and manage those stress-induced cravings.
Earlier this year, I had a professional sportswoman ask me for advice. Now, I'm a sports psychologist, so this is a normal part of my day. She loved her sport and had played it almost every day since she was a child. But lately, she'd become so scared of playing the game that she was close to quitting it altogether. Now, she's one of the most talented people I have ever worked with, and when I saw her play, I was in total awe of her. But ask her to play competitively, even against me, and she became a total wreck, almost unable to hit the ball. Now, this is not at all unusual. You see, she felt extreme stress and fear when competing, and like most people who are scared, they tend to run away from what scares them. Now, I'm not saying you're scared of losing weight, but you're probably stressed, and your emotions are constantly pushing you into doing things you don't really want to do. And if you're not careful, you too might end up giving up on your goals altogether.
Thoughts, feelings, behaviours, they're all linked. You can't change one without affecting the others.
It's like they're links in a chain. The first link is connected directly to the second link, and the second link to the third link, and so on. And sometimes it's your behaviour that's in the driving seat. Now for me, whenever I sit down in front of the TV in the evenings, it's the act of watching TV that triggers the feelings of hunger and the desire to eat.
Most of the time, however, it's your emotions that are in control. Something happens that makes you feel stressed, sad, or even happy, and it is those feelings, those emotions that are the trigger to eat. Traditional diets often fail because they don't address those underlying emotional drivers of eating.
Now the good news is that we can attack different parts of the chain, but what if we don't even realise what's happening? Habits are so automatic that they dominate our lives. How can we start to attack the links in the chain if we don't even know about the chain? Well, first, we need to identify the initial trigger. What sets us off? What starts our habit in the first place? And this is surprisingly much harder to work out than you might think. When you're stressed, your body releases a hormone called cortisol. Long-term chronic stress leads to a constantly elevated level of cortisol, which promotes hunger. Cortisol is basically like the alarm system for your body, telling it to store energy in case of an emergency. Now, unfortunately, that often means storing it as fat, especially around your belly. People also use food as a numbing strategy to create a buffer between themselves and difficult feelings, or even to deliberately self-sabotage your weight loss goals.
You need to understand the when and the why of your own eating patterns, so you can start to recognise the chain of events that lead you to eat.
Then and only then can we attack and hopefully break that chain. Now, I would encourage you to start writing these triggers down. It doesn't matter where, in a journal, on your phone, in a voice memo, anywhere. Don't judge yourself, just write everything down. This is just evidence gathering, and it's for your eyes only. Write down whenever you ate something that you really didn't want to, time and place, and record your feelings at the time. Happy, sad, stressed, lonely,
whether you think those feelings are relevant or not.
Journaling can help you identify stress triggers and help you to process your emotions in a healthy, non-judgmental way.
But why does the same trigger affect different people differently? Why do you eat when you're stressed, but other people stop eating?
The key is how you interpret the trigger. You see, different people react differently to exactly the same trigger. For example, let's say that you're due to meet an old friend for a drink this evening. Just as you're about to head off out the door, the friend cancels. You choose to understand and assume that your friend has a valid reason. You can empathise, as you've often had to do this yourself in the past. No matter, you can rearrange and see them next week. Someone else, however, could choose to feel rejected and assume that the friend doesn't value their relationship, leading to feelings of anger or sadness.
You see how the same trigger does not lead to the same emotional response for everyone.
And no doubt you've noticed how I used the word choose. Your reaction to the trigger is a choice. Now, it may be an often repeated choice and therefore a habit and hard to break, but it's still a choice and it can be changed. You see, emotional eating is a coping mechanism to deal with emotions and stress, but it isn't the only coping mechanism. You can choose an alternative. Emotional eating is just a habit after all. Now, breaking the cycle of emotional eating is difficult, but it is possible with the right strategies and support.
Knowing and realising that you have a choice in all of this might on its own be enough to help you make a change.
But if stress is a big part of your life, then eating when stressed is a harder habit to break.
You see, stress directly affects the way your brain works. It changes behaviour, mood, and crucially, decision making. So if you want to keep on your path to your weight loss goals, you need to understand what stress is doing to your brain and how you can learn to make better decisions, even when stressed. Like putting down that bit of cake. Yes, you. Stop it. Put it down now.
The front part of your brain is called the prefrontal cortex, and this part is all involved in decision making. It's the part of your brain that takes longest to develop and isn't fully developed until your early 20s. That's why teenagers always make stupid decisions. They literally can't help it. But you know better. The problem is that stress interferes with the integration of information in this part of the brain. This can lead you to choosing short-term rewards over long-term benefits, such as cake now versus lower body fat in 3 months' time. It impairs your judgment and cognitive flexibility, so you become much more rigid in your thinking and less able to persuade yourself to put down the cake. It also stops you learning from past experiences, so it's harder for you to remember that you are indeed able to not eat the cake just as you did last week. So stress is bad for you. This is not news, but hopefully knowing that it actually changes your brain can help. You see, the way I look at it is that my brain when stressed is not really my brain. It's more like a rubbish version of me. And the decisions I make when stressed are going to be rubbish. I know that. So there are two things you can do. First is to try to reduce the stress in your life,
Which I know is easier said than done. But it's a challenge worth pursuing for lots of reasons. The advice is advice you've heard before. Get outside. Go for a walk. Deep breathing, meditation, yoga, whatever you fancy, whatever works for you.
Try it. Your brain will thank you. But if you're anything like the younger me, then my response would be, I've got a stressful job, I've got a mortgage to pay, I've got a young family. I can't just decide not to be stressed. I am stressed. This is my life. And look, I get it. So what can you do if you're stressed and you still want to lose weight? One of the more usual bits of advice is to remove temptation. So when you feel that urge to reach for that unhealthy snack, there's nothing to reach for. Now this is great advice, but basically totally useless in real life. I have 3 kids and my house is stuffed with snacks.
What I like to do is to use what I call a stop protocol. Now how this works is when you reach into that snack drawer, you need to picture a big stop sign appearing right there in front of you. And whenever you see that stop sign in your mind, you need to actually stop what you're doing right there. It's a trigger to just pause and count slowly to 10.
Ten seconds is longer than you think, right? And it gives your brain time to think. You see, you still have those longer term healthy goals. They're in here somewhere. You just need to give your brain time to access them and to remind yourself what you actually want to do right now. Now, it won't work every time, but it is surprisingly effective. When you give yourself that short time to think, then you can choose a different activity. And this is the next step. It's easier to replace a habit than to stop it completely. So choose an alternative action to replace your emotional eating habit. Now this could be anything, such as grabbing some fruit, having a glass of water, go for a walk, because the act of physically distancing yourself from the unhealthy snacks works for me and could work for you. Play a video game. Look, I can't tell you what will work for you, but find something and give it a go. Now finally, as a psychologist, it would be wrong of me not to say that these tips and this video is no substitute for professional advice. If you suffer from severe emotional eating issues, then I would strongly suggest seeking therapy or counselling from a qualified professional. Now, I talked earlier about how stress and emotional eating is actually just a habit that you've created to cope with your emotions. As you know, habits are really difficult to break, but there are science-based methods that have been proven to work time and time again. And in this video, I go through how to form new habits that you'll actually stick to. Thanks for watching.